After a decade of dominance, id Software in 2004 would release their first game since 1999's Quake 3 Arena. That game would be Doom 3. And sitting down to play it recently, I have to ask, what the fuck happened? In 1991, John Carmack and John Romero would found id Software alongside the unrelated Adrian Carmack and Tom Hall. With Carmack's amazing technical skills and Romero's incredible design and imagination, they would pave the way for video games for the next decade. It all started when Carmack discovered the secret of how to develop side-scrolling video games for the PC, which at the time didn't have the power to process games like the NES did. Using the tech, they created their first game, a light-hearted platformer about a boy named Commander Keen. God, I remember playing that game like crazy with my Gravis gamepad. When I turned to the obscura. However, Carmack and Romero wouldn't stop there. They would then create a new genre in first-person shooting when they would release Wolfenstein 3D. But it would be their next game that would really put the guys on the map. A game which at the time was a technological marvel. A game about a Marine on Mars, shooting hordes of demons and possessed soldiers. 1993 would see the release of Doom. During the early days of PC gaming, a lot of distribution was done by the means of shareware, meaning a portion of the game was free, but you have to pay to get the full game. Because of this, it was reported that Doom was on 10 million computers by 1995. After Doom 2 would be released in 1994, the franchise would rest for the next 10 years, before returning for a reboot in Doom 3. Doom 3 will be the first game to use Carmack's brand new id Tech 4, which allowed for dynamic, real-time lighting and shadow like never before. So anticipation was high when Doom 3 was released on the PC, Mac, and Xbox version thanks to Vicarious Visions on August 3rd, 2004. We open on the Union Aerospace Corporation research facility on Mars, and here comes my favorite character, unnamed Space Marine protagonist number 587. After receiving your PDA and performing a few duties, you wonder what is taking so long for hell to arrive. Oh, there it is. And the monsters then proceed to knock out all the lights, leaving you with your torch. From there you proceed through the darkened facility, complete with possessed co-workers, flame-throwing beasts, and beasts that just run up and attack you. And you shoot them all away with futuristic versions of current-day weaponry. I guess we haven't evolved to the point of energy weapons. Of course, if this was Mass Effect, they'd be heat-sink clips. Most of the game will have you shooting anything that moves, complain about the darkness, and finding PDAs to unlock doors to new rooms where you shoot more and complain more. The significant feature of Doom 3 was that your flashlight counted as a weapon, meaning that you couldn't traverse the dark hallways, of which it seems the entire Mars base was consisted of, with a flashlight and gun at the same time. Which begs the question, did anyone bother to bring a roll of duct tape to Mars? Fortunately, someone else answered that question, as the response to the fact you could only hold one thing or the other was so negative that 3 days later, a man by the name of Glenn Frenzon Murphy released the duct tape mod, allowing for a mini light to be attached to the shotgun and machine gun. But as you can see, I'm using the original Xbox version, which, despite the console's power, doesn't have the ability to run mods. But I'm not hating on the game just because of the flashlight. No, it's actually much deeper than that. So what the fuck did happen? To put it simply, Carmack and Romero are complete bastards. Romero's an arrogant bastard, and Carmack's a stubborn one. After the release of Doom, id was able to hire on more staff, which left Romero, who had been crunching for what seemed like forever, to finally work an easier schedule. Unfortunately, this led to Romero to slack off, which caused the rest of the company to worry about his work ethic. When id started work on their next project, Quake, Romero had in his mind a new type of game, a first-person melee. Unfortunately, due to delays with coding the engine, Carmack and the rest of id decided they would just make another shooter. Romero hated this idea. He wanted id to innovate with every title, and not just make the same old games, and his work suffered for it. Soon after the release of Quake, Carmack, with the rest of id behind him, asked for Romero's resignation. While in some ways I can understand, it was stupid on Carmack's part. It was basically like a website owner firing the guy who did 90% of the creative work, like design, code, making sure the content is right. I mean, that would just be stupid, right? And there lies the problem. While Carmack and Romero were stubborn, arrogant bastards, they were bastards that worked well together. On their own, however, well, Dagatana. After Romero had left, Carmack was basically in charge, and his stubbornness would clearly start to show. In 1999 would see the release of Quake 3 Arena, which would feature no story whatsoever, just deathmatch. That's it. They released a multiplayer-only game with one mode. Despite the rest of id's protests, Carmack wouldn't budge on the decision. This was also around the same time that Epic Games unveiled their own engine, Unreal. Since then, Epic has surpassed id when it comes to its engines being licensed. Alongside that, Carmack wanted to keep id small, as a way to keep the team focused. That may have worked 5 years ago, but by 2000 the level of work required would mean their next project, Doom 3, would take some time. Also by this time, only 2 of the founders were still at id. Alongside Romero leaving, Tom Hall had left earlier on, favouring the light-hearted design of Commander Keen, and never really getting behind the violence of Wolfenstein and Doom. Adrian Carmack would leave id shortly after Doom 3 was released. But what I feel is one of the biggest fails of Doom 3 is the design. Ignoring the numerous corridors, Doom 3 just looks really uninspiring, and the engine has aged considerably badly. How do I know this? Well, let's compare it to another game that came out that same year. Valve's last game was released in 1999 as well, with Half-Life 2 also being released in 2004, boasting Valve's new tech with the Source engine. And let's be honest here, what looks better, and what has aged better? The Source engine was designed to be upgradable, so even now, with Portal 2, and the engine almost being a decade old, it still looks pretty good. But still back then, Source and Half-Life 2 looked and felt better than Doom 3. Which is funny considering Valve's original engine was just a heavily modded Quake engine. To put it another way, if id was a brain, Carmack would be the left side, leveled by logic, and Romero would be in the right side in its free-flowing creativity. Not to diminish its current designers, but the entire design of the game just felt by the numbers, and the design of enemies just felt unimaginative, especially compared to the original. The enemies in the new game don't hold a candle to the Kako or Spire Demons of the past, which leads me to the biggest issue. The game just isn't scary. I'm serious. Most of the game sees you picking up PDAs, reading pointless emails, and listening to audio logs in hope of finding the combinations for weapon lockers. As for the enemies, the AI feels really bare bones, and after a few jump scares, you find the tension has been lost completely. Don't mistake me for hating the game. Doom 3 is functional and very much playable, but what Doom 3 is a major disappointment. And recently we got Doom 3. BFG edition, a sort of upscaled version which finally allows you to hold a gun and flashlight at the same time.
While previous engines by id had been outsourced to May developers to make their own games, id Tech 4 would only see a handful of games. The most prominent one being the 3D Realms Human Head Studios game, Prey. However, the engine was used recently, in fact 2 years ago, for Splash Damage's Brink.
id's legacy in the presentation of Doom 3 led to the game not meeting its expectations. Since then, id was finally purchased by a major company, ZeniMax, the owners of Bethesda. Since then, they have released Rage, a game that, while looking amazing, was met with reception. And now they are currently working on a new Doom. Will this new Doom be the true new Doom we are all looking for? I don't know. I'm Enigma. We'll see you all next week, when I finally get to review something current.